Hey everybody, today I'm joined with Liteliger. He's got a channel on YouTube and he does a lot of investigations on different crypto projects. And if you guys watched my video from yesterday, you know that we've uncovered a lot of stuff and we actually kind of talked about some of the stuff he found in his investigation on that video. But Liteliger, how are you doing? Tell us a little bit about yourself and your channel.
So I'm doing great. I am obviously Liteliger and I do all types of crypto content, but I'm obviously really passionate about like cleaning the crypto industry and exposing a lot of bad players in the space, because it's really within the interest of the people who want to stay here in the long term to weed out these bad people. And I think, as we have seen, a lot of these people, they create multiple projects, so it doesn't really stop on a one scam. It goes into a next one and a next one. And surprisingly, what I've witnessed through a lot of my investigations is that there are deeper roots, there are connections to another project, which are like running promotions on 4chan or Twitter, or conducting same type of a content creators, and like through them basically, you know, spread out their message or etc.
Yeah, I think that's what we're finding here too, is that, you know, I think in some ways on this channel, and we're not the only people for sure, we've been played a little bit, we feel like, by some people that know kind of what kind of coins we like, what we think's acceptable, what video, you know, what types of tokenomics we think are legit. Obviously, we know we've moved to a place where we don't cover projects that have, you know, anonymous founders and anonymous teams. But now what we've discovered is that, you know, now they're getting a little more bold, a little more brazen. And even that, you know, even having a team with people that people know is not enough to keep things from getting, you know, rug pulled and things like that. So let's talk a little bit about the Distx situation. There's just been a bad pill for me to swallow. These are people we trusted a lot. And we felt like had the best interest of crypto at heart. And now we're starting to learn that everything wasn't quite what it appeared to be. And we were kind of sold on this idea of cleaning up the space because it is something we're passionate about. And we kind of had blinders on to actually what they were doing. So tell us a little bit about kind of what you discovered with Distx and some connections, that they had to other projects.
Yeah, so it's a very, very big network of a lot of people. Everything seems to connect a lot to John McAfee and his friend Josh Chase, I think he was his surname. And he started this project, I believe in 2019, called Switch, which involved people like Reborn 1002. And later on, this project, I mean, it was originally called Ethershift, and then it rebranded to Switch. At some point, there was this, I don't know if it was artificial, but this huge bump on the price because it was announced that the token holders would be getting Ghost by McAfee. So it went like 8,000% up. And then they started to acquire these companies. And one of them was actually Clearpoll, and that was actually created by Adrian. And then Adrian went to work on Switch, and then, you know, he outsourced a lot of the stuff, and they promised to bring, this was McAfee's own tweet, he said, we're going to be supporting EOS, we're going to be supporting Binance chain on our DEX. None of those were delivered. And then, you know, as the story goes on, Adrian goes to Unitrade. Unitrade also does outsourcing. Then Adrian leaves from Unitrade, and then he goes to create Distx, and the rest is kind of history. What happens with that, they raised a bunch of money to a lot of these things, and you have to understand that Adrian got a lot of money also from Unitrade. He also got money from Switch. He got all of this money, and he still kept raising from the people more of those funds, and yet managed to run out of money in like what, 3 months? I think it was
2,500 ETH. Yeah.
And it was gone, and they just called a day, even though the token wasn't even going that much down. I think it was minus 60% from its all-time high, which is not even that bad in my opinion when you look at some of the other coins in the space.
Well, I think and one thing to think about in regards to all these the tokens, Distx and Lid and a lot of these other token launching platforms, is, we'll kind of talk here in a second about the Ponzi scheme of token launching that we've kind of been uncovering. But, on top of that, when you look at the thing that we missed, I guess what I'm trying to say is we weren't looking at the individual value necessarily of the token behind the token launching platforms. We were looking more at the benefits of the platforms and being able to launch projects had locked liquidity and we're safe. And at some point we were like, okay, well, if projects have liquidity locked on Lid or on Distx or on Trust Swap, then we feel like it's a good project because the liquidity is locked. But what we found is these scammers have been able to find ways around that. And the launching platforms themselves are so based on the price of their token. And then when that runs out, they launch another token that they get a percentage of. And that's kind of how they keep the whole thing going. So can we talk about that for a little bit? What have you seen with these projects that are like serial token launchers or that have platforms launching tokens? Do you see a connection between, the companies that are doing it and the tokens that are launching on their platforms?
Well, I think that it goes without kind of saying that it's within the interest of a lot of these launch pads to launch many tokens as possible. And that's how they kind of, at least some of them are kind of geared up to get the money from that way. And because of that, they don't necessarily need to or want to. A lot of these, as for example, it's been policy of Lid and Trust to not actually validate the projects. It's like they say it's open source, anybody can use it, and etc. So that has kind of they don't really want to take a lot of responsibility.
No, none.
In a lot of ways in these launches, and they could. It wouldn't be that big of a issue to hire somebody to do the vetting for them and get the audits done and have all of these requirements, have the white papers, have the KYC done privately between, perhaps the launchpad and the people. But obviously that can be abused. As we kind of saw with Unilayer, the owner said that, yes, the KYC has been done. I talked with them, but how can I trust your word if you're not going to be providing any of that information to the public? Right. Like how is that trust going to be built between the launchpad and the people? So there's a lot of these holes in these models, and as you said, the liquidity thing is just like a one angle to exit. And what we have seen with these guys, especially whatever it's the people associated with McAfee and Unilayer and etc., they do this sort of a like what I would call like the long con, where they're just going to be stalling out until the coin is kind of dead and not delivering, or the project just fails outright. So they have this sort of a different type of a strategy, and some of them, like Distx, they did horrible spending. It just didn't make a lot of sense how they used those monies, and they had like too much like outsourced people, for instance.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that wasn't that right, that Unitrade was looking for a developer on site I use all the time, Upwork. Did you ever see that?
Yeah.
So, and I had actually seen that early on, but I didn't really like think it was that big of a red flag, at the time. Like, yeah, I mean, we hire people on Upwork to do stuff. I've before I had an actual team, like everybody I used was on Upwork for different freelance stuff. But I guess if you're a project that raises this much money, I mean, you should already kind of have a plan for who you're going to hire. You shouldn't be nickel and diming on Upwork.
Yeah, I think it goes without saying that I don't think, like, if any like a real world company would come out and ask for like investment and say, well, we don't actually have this artist yet, but we're going to be building this music label, but we don't have any of these artists yet, like that doesn't go. Like, that's not how it works. So people have to have a bit more higher expectations and things in place already, and then get the investment. Usually like when we look at a lot of these big companies and how they have risen, like when Facebook was, got the funding, they already had a working product,
Yeah.
So you have to have I think that's, you build it and then people will come. I think that's my approach, not when the money comes and then you start building, because
everything's backwards in crypto. What's interesting is I just did, people may have seen it by the time this comes out, but did a really interesting interview with Charles Hoskinson, and he made I connected some dots about a pretty good analogy, which is that when it comes to drugs, the federal, not narcotics, but when it comes to medicine and prescriptions and things, you know, the FDA is very strict on what kind of medicine comes out. And there's got to be rigorous testing. You see it with vaccines, you see it with a lot of stuff. Rigorous testing. But if you want to put out a supplement, you can just mix anything together and throw it out there. And then they only get investigated if someone dies from it. Like, that's literally the rule. It's if someone dies from this, then the FDA has to come in and say, like, okay, well, this actually isn't that great. But you can just mix any chemicals together and throw it out. And there's been a lot of things that are like almost almost narcotics. The supplements were able to put out, like, just changing like one little molecule here or there, and the FDA couldn't say anything about it. So that's how it is in crypto. It's like there's a few projects that are out there doing the right stuff and really trying to build everything on the front end and raise the money the right way and do all this. But everybody else is just trying to get this quick cash grab with these supplement type, projects. And if somebody gets burned and scammed, well, then now we got to go and take a look at what happened. And then it's unfortunately what we're having to do right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a perfect analogy, to be honest, to what is going on. And it's also a bit shocking to me, like, how people move so fast from their losses, because a lot of people lost money in these investments, and yet, like, I don't think they get as much attention as they should, these people who basically run off with this money. And I think it was a funny thing with a previous investigation that I did, which involved a guy, a boy actually, of 14 years old, who was scamming people. And and he had some credit card fraud stuff going on also, but as a side hustle. But he said to me, this was on a Telegram, and he said that, Rugpulls are not illegal. And I thought it was like a really dumb thing to say, but it's kind of true.
True, it is true. I'm sitting here thinking, like, wow, that's brazen that he would say that, but
yeah, and that's kind of
regulated.
Yeah, and you have these people like Adrian, for instance, who we know their face, we know their name, but would there be any like legal ramifications on these people? I think some of them must have been known that the way they kind of have played this game in a clever way, they may not have any charges, so to speak, or no lawsuit can be done.
Well, I think they could probably be sued, civilly, or through the civil law system, a lawsuit. But criminally, that's what brings up a much tougher question, especially if they're out of the country and things like that. So, and what is the connection? There is a connection between Unitrade and Unilayer also, right?
Yeah, I mean, both Unilayer and so the owner of Unilayer, Geo, he worked at Ghost, and also the people at Unitrade worked at Ghost, which includes Reborn and Adrian. All of them worked at Ghost at some point, and they were running these, and even some of them were transparent that we have the time to work on 3 projects simultaneously, and everything is going to be good. And that's why McAfee kind of exited from the project initially, because there were people inside who were running like 2 projects at the same time. And to me, it's like, that doesn't sound like very committed developer, especially when a lot of these people were promising things that would be launching. A lot of the Unitrade stuff that they would promise to deliver, they got delayed. So that just shows you that I think it takes a lot of time to develop this stuff, and I don't think anybody should be like working on 2 projects simultaneously when it comes to especially when you have a roadmap and you have promised to people that we're going to deliver this, we're going to deliver that, and then they don't deliver, or it gets delayed, or the product comes out and it's like half-baked, it's not ready, it has glitches, it doesn't have an audit. So this happens a lot, sadly.
Well, I think and this is still developing. I mean, we're going to be finding out much more about all these connections. I mean, I'm hot on the trail of a lot of this stuff, and there's a lot of things that we still have question marks about, that we have some inklings to some ways some of these projects are connected, but we're going to uncover all these and definitely draw some hard lines in the sand and probably make some enemies on the way. But the smoke and mirrors of this game that these places have been playing is quite interesting, because it really is. If you look at what Unitrade, Unilayer, Distx, what a lot of these project Ghost have in common is the deliverable platform or mechanism or utility of what they were saying they're building is super interesting, and it's novel, and it's like, this will really work, this will be good. But it's everything that happens in the middle that's the scam. You know, this, what they're doing, they're shifting your eyes away from looking at their tokenomics, looking at what they're doing with their money, looking at their marketing. They're shifting your eyes away from that, and they're saying, look at this prize down the road. Like, look how great this is going to be when this is out, but it never comes out because they're not actually working on developing, because they only got somebody working in exactly what you're saying. They're just kind of working on it a little bit. You know, they're only developing enough to be able to show you something that, you know, they can point to and say, oh, see, we are working, but like, they ain't never coming out with their final results.
Yeah, and I think this speaks about fundamentally of the problem where when people like come with counter arguments to a lot of the investigations that was done, they say, well, the team's funds are locked for a certain period of time, but there should be some type of a DAO organization which allows the community to choose when the team funds are going to be released, so to speak. So that makes like a leverage for the investors to like leverage their situation, and we're not going to release those team funds until you deliver on the product, and nothing other shady is actually going to be taking place. And that's the kind of the problem, that sometimes the launch pads might be in cahoots with the project, and so you don't necessarily trust them either. It really should come to the investors who put out the initial money, for example, to have the control or the vote on when are those team funds going to be released. So I think that's the one thing that nobody has really talked about when it comes to these team vested things, because ultimately they are going to be getting the money even after they have exit scams. So I mean, when smart contract bound, it's going to get released there, and there has to be some type of a stop mechanism or a voting mechanism how that is going to be released.
Yeah. Well, we're doing our best. We're trying to learn more about the situation. We're trying to figure out what we can do. I mean, there's a lot of people know. I mean, we promoted a lot of these, you know, I mean, they had our boxes checked off. They knew what we liked, and they, you know, used, like I said, we feel like we've been a pawn in a game, and we don't like it. And we are going to be coming at a lot of these people and a lot of these things, but trying to figure out how to, like, we're trying to develop a way to where we're going to take money that came in from a lot of these and push it back out to people. We just don't know the best way to do it. Like, we don't even know how, because how intricate all this, how many of these top holders are the team itself, and we're actually rewarding by giving them money. And these are things that we're developing and looking at down the road. And we're going to be talking over the next few weeks on the channel or with my team internally about how we can do that, how we can best, you know, help out, you know, people who've been hurt by this stuff. So if anybody's got any ideas, you know, definitely feel free to drop those comments down below, because the hard thing, like I said, is if we take money that came in from Distx and we give it out to all the top Distx holders, how many of those holders are the people that are involved in the scam? And that's what we don't know. So trying to develop this. And Liteliger, thank you for coming on the show today. And we are going to have you on the show again in the future. You're going to be doing some research for us and helping us figure out some things in the future as well. So really excited to have you, you know, play that role. Just real quick, if you can tell everybody where they can find you at.
Yeah, everybody can find me at Liger Light at Twitter. Also, I'm in YouTube, and also I can be found on Library, where all of my uploads are automatically uploaded,
Awesome.
which is a great platform for those who don't like the YouTube censorship.
Yeah, we are on Library as well. We have automatic uploads there as well. We're a big fan of Library. It's probably our favorite decentralized video source platform. So thank you once again for joining us, guys. That's all we got for today. We're gonna have him back on the show, you know, with more about this investigation down the road. So definitely be keeping your eyes and ears open for that. That's all we got. Be blessed. BitBoy out.